Hey guys, welcome back to Loft Sports. A very warm welcome back. I would never have imagined when I did the last video in March about March Madness being canceled that I would be sitting here on Labor Day talking about Notre Dame opening its season against Duke because A, the Irish had to join a conference, and B, just the craziness of this whole 2020 with COVID thing. I've been putting this off because I just wasn't sure they were going to have a season, but Notre Dame is set to play Duke in South Bend on Saturday, so I'm going to go ahead and start rolling out our videos. This is my 2020 Notre Dame preview. So I could sit here and spend a whole bunch of time talking about how crazy the offseason was, the ACC move, all of that. I'm just going to dive right into it. The expectations for Notre Dame this year are through the roof, which they have been for most of the Kelly era. However, it's a little more lofty this year just because of the way the schedule is altered and because two of the major five conferences aren't even playing. So theoretically, there's kind of a wild card spot in the playoff. You think about it, the three conference champions are more than likely to get in, and then probably either a second SEC team or potentially a second ACC team, depending on how things shake up. Listen, Notre Dame, I think this team is good, and with Ohio State and Penn State and Oregon out of the mix, I think we're closer to a top five team than we've been in recent years. That's somewhat by default with some of those teams I mentioned not playing. But let's talk about this team. I think there's potential here to beat a lot of teams on any given Saturday, but are we really there? Are we really ready to play a Clemson potentially twice? Are we ready to play with an Alabama? Are we ready to play with a Georgia or this year potentially Florida looking strong? I love this team, but Ian Book is still Ian Book. And the guy's won a lot of games for us, but in the games where he has had to step up, he has not produced the numbers he's needed to produce. Your quarterback has to be a gamer that goes and wins you a game like that. And the rest of the team is as close as we've been in my lifetime to being a national championship team. We have NFL talent on defense, on offense, in the trenches, at the skill positions, where it matters. But we don't have NFL talent where it probably matters most, and that's quarterback. Ian Book is a force, is a three-star recruit, and that's what he's been at Notre Dame. He's surrounded by endless talent, and he's able to beat these teams like Navy and USC and Stanford. You can beat those teams with a quarterback when you play your B game. You can't beat Georgia. You can't beat Clemson when you don't play your A game, and Ian Book has not shown me that he can play his A game against elite competition. So that's going to be the hurdle for Notre Dame is can they take the next step and beat a top five caliber team, something we have not done really at all in the Brian Kelly era. I think the expectations for Notre Dame are a little too high this year. And in years past, when Notre Dame's expectations are here, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to get let down because they're not going to be able to meet them. For me, expectations, probably a push at the playoff, an appearance in the ACC championship game would be a satisfying season, and to not get absolutely ran out of the building when we play Clemson. Last year, everybody said Notre Dame was going to be 10-2, would lose at Georgia, would lose at Michigan. I think everybody agrees Notre Dame's performance at Georgia was above expectation. The performance against Michigan was quite a bit below expectation. Getting absolutely destroyed in Ann Arbor was painful, and there's really no excuse for that. So Brian Kelly has to take a step and win that big game. I'm just going to jump right to it. Our 10-game schedule against the ACC, and then USF is our non-conference opponent. I think Notre Dame dominates Duke to open the season. There's no reason to be threatened by this Duke team. We should beat USF. There is talent there, but they haven't really found themselves yet. So I think we start 2-0. We'll beat Wake Forest. I'm a little worried about Florida State's skill set and what they bring, but they have quarterback issues. They have a new coach. Nothing to be worried about there. I think the most scary game in the first half of the season is honestly the Louisville game. The Cardinal gave us fits in the first half of the opener last year. Yes, it was on the road. Yes, it was the first game. But Louisville was a team that exceeded expectations last year and is growing in terms of rebuilding their program to where they were a few years ago with Lamar Jackson. I think we win that game, but I would not be shocked if Louisville came to South Bend and beat us. Yes, it's at home, but we're talking about, it doesn't really matter where these games are played because there's not going to be full stadiums, more than likely. On the road at Pitt historically has given elite Notre Dame teams fits. We usually win those games, but it's probably going to be a hold your breath type of deal, and it's on the road at Pitt. I think Notre Dame comes away with a win there. Follow up with a game against Georgia Tech on the road. Don't see any problems there. Georgia Tech is still completely rebuilding from the triple option offense that they phased out when Paul Johnson retired. Then comes the game. Arguably the biggest regular season game of the year in college football this year. A couple others obviously come to mind: Alabama, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas. But this one is in that category. I think Notre Dame plays with Clemson for a half, and then the Tigers just take away their talent. They pull away. Ian Book will throw a pick six. He'll make some bad decisions, take a sack. The defense won't be able to stop Clemson for 4 quarters, and Ian Book will show that he's just about an average quarterback at best, and Clemson's talent will prevail. We follow up with a road game against BC, another pesky team that gives us fits throughout history. I think we win that game, and then we go to North Carolina, and I think this is where you're going to see the Notre Dame team that this is the game for me of the season that defines it. Is Notre Dame, because we're in a conference and we still have something to play for, do they finish the season strong, or do they kind of have that hiccup of, well, we've lost, what's there to play for? I think this is going to be our most important game of the season, and I think North Carolina is going to be a really good team, and I think this is Mac Brown's signature moment. North Carolina almost beat Clemson last year. They've got a really good young team with a good mobile quarterback. I think the Tar Heels knock off Notre Dame. I'd love to tell you that we're going to go 10-1 and beat Clemson in a rematch in the ACC championship game, but I think North Carolina is going to beat Notre Dame in Chapel Hill, thus eliminating us from the playoff picture, even though we still could play for the ACC title. Then we'll play Syracuse at home to finish the season. I think we beat them. 9-2 should be good enough to go to the ACC championship game. And then we'll play Clemson, and we'll probably get beat by Clemson again. Maybe not as handily, because the pressure won't be on Notre Dame, because they won't have the pressure that Clemson has. But I just don't think this team is there because of Ian Book at quarterback. Lee Corso can pick him to win the Heisman all he wants. This team is just not ready to play at that level. Brian Kelly has not shown me since the Oklahoma game in 2012 he can win a big game against a top 10 opponent when the talent is equal or we're slightly behind. So I think 9-3 with a loss in the ACC championship game, respectable year, but probably not the year most people are thinking Notre Dame will have. I will say, though, I am thankful we at least are playing. I know a lot of Big Ten and Pac-12 fans are disappointed that they're not. So at least we'll get to see Notre Dame play. 9-3 is my prediction on the year.